Welcome to Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, keep an open mind. The UK Prime Minister again defends his much criticised scheme to deport asylum seekers from Britain to Rwanda. Boris Johnson tries to talk up the plan whilst in Kigali for a 54-nation Commonwealth summit. Also, whilst most members of the bloc of former British colonies, Gabon and Togo are expected to join Mozambique and Rwanda as the latest nations to join the Commonwealth, despite few historic links to the UK. And as policymakers and business leaders from across Africa meet in Brussels for the Africa Energy Forum, we take a closer look at some of the major shifts needed to finance the continent's essential transition to reliable and cleaner energy sources. But first, on his first day of his trip to Kigali, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's told critics to keep an open mind about his controversial deal to send migrants from the UK to Rwanda. Johnson's there along with dozens of other leaders of Commonwealth countries for a major summit. Camille Edlek has the details.
It was a visit heavy with symbolism for the UK government. In Kigali, Prime Minister Boris Johnson again defended his controversial plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. This after a last-minute injunction from the European Court of Human Rights that blocked the first flight of deportees.
Look, I hear them, and I think, if I may be so, I just think what they're basing their criticisms on a perception, perhaps a stereotype of Rwanda that is now outdated. And they should come here as the heads of the Commonwealth governments are coming here today, see the kind of progress that Rwanda has made.
The British Prime Minister also announced the launch of a preferential trading system for almost 100 countries, among them a large number of developing nations, including host Rwanda. The Commonwealth Summit hadn't been held since 2018 because of the pandemic and brings together the leaders of the 54 member countries. This year, they will discuss inflation, the war in Ukraine and development. In a separate summit on Thursday, Commonwealth leaders committed to eradicating malaria by 2030.
If there is one thing the pandemic has taught us, it is that together, through coordinated and collaborative action, we can achieve much more.
The Commonwealth is also set to adopt the Living Lands Charter, an action plan to fight against climate change and land degradation.
Well, despite being francophone countries with no historic ties to the UK, Togo and Gabon are set to become the latest members of the Commonwealth. Their admission is expected to be approved later this week. Our correspondents report.
They're talking to a guard.
Kathleen is teaching English to employees from the private and public sectors. English language proficiency has become a highly sought-after skill in Gabon ever since it set its sights on joining the Commonwealth.
There are more and more English-speaking businesses in Gabon, so there is more pressure to speak English, and most of the job interviews are in English now.
For students like Pavik, the vocabulary can be difficult to master. English is still sparsely spoken here, and it's often difficult to find people to practice conversation with.
The only downside is that we don't have the opportunity to continue to practice or maintain what we've learnt, because when we go home, we don't have the chance to speak with our brothers and sisters in English.
Gabon is banking on Commonwealth membership to bring economic benefits.
I think that this membership will be a blessing, especially at an economic level, but also for job opportunities for young people who have been badly hit. So this membership is long awaited, and it will help the glaring unemployment that Gabon is currently experiencing.
There are limits to the impact that joining the Commonwealth can have on Gabon's development. Some civil society organizations think that the state should rather stay focused on improving governance. Mark Ona is an environmental activist who wants tackling corruption to be more of a priority.
Today we can join any organization, but if internal governance is not on the agenda, if human rights are not respected, if the rules don't change at this level, we'll have joined 10,000 organizations and it won't change anything for Gabon.
Gabon is ranked 124th globally for corruption, up 5 places from the previous year. Authorities hope membership in the Commonwealth could boost its fight against corruption through the sharing of best practice, research and training between member states.
Well, in DR Congo, an inquiry commission chief appears to be heard coercing witnesses in leaked audio recordings. George Muzibaziba headed up investigations into alleged massacres of indigenous villagers. He's heard telling a witness that his testimony would be dangerous for him before another commission member interrupts and calls for a stop to the intimidation. In June, the German government-funded Commission of Inquiry eventually concluded that, despite extensive evidence of rape, massacres and abuse of the Batwa people at the Kahuzi-Bieka National Park, park rangers and soldiers had not committed widespread atrocities. The Congolese researcher and American journalist who authored the report that triggered the inquiry have faced death threats and been forced to flee DR Congo. They've slammed the Commission's findings as a cover-up. The Africa Energy Forum is underway in Brussels, looking at the progress and hurdles the continent faces in building more sustainable energy systems. The issue sits at the intersection of crucial questions of development, climate change and climate justice. Earlier, I spoke to Letitia Di Marez from RMI, a non-profit focused on clean energy, and asked her about how Africa is doing in its transition to clean energy.
For many nations, the issue of energy transition is mostly from switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy. In Africa, the challenge is even greater, as it is also to provide access to electricity. About half of African homes don't have yet access to reliable electricity. So it's kind of a double challenge that African nations are taking on. But Africa has made great progress in the development of in particular, its solar energy markets over the recent years, with the continent experiencing a growth in new installations of solar generation, mainly driven by 5 countries, so not equally distributed across the continent. Those 5 countries being Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, Namibia, and Ghana. So the traditional path of bringing power to underserved communities was to extend the grid, build new fossil fuel plants, very centralized, run transmission and distribution lines to far-flung villages, farms, and homes. That model has worked in the global north. It's not working that well in sub-Saharan Africa. So there is currently a vital need to rethink the model and to make the energy transition in Africa in particular people-centered. And one great solution that RMI has been working on with communities and investors in governments in Africa are mini-grids, those small-scale distribution networks that allow for local generation, primarily based on solar energy, with batteries that guarantees reliable 24/7 power. So the energy transition in Africa will have to go hand in hand with guaranteeing universal access to clean, affordable, and safe energy.
So you're saying that the model needs to be rethought, but in terms of doing that for the continent, does Africa face any particular hurdles that you think perhaps are different to those faced by other regions?
Yes, indeed. Africa, first of all, faces an infrastructure challenge. The grid infrastructure is currently inadequate to facilitate the transition towards renewable energy. It was designed to accommodate the conventional centralized energy sources. So it is highly inefficient with a lot of electricity losses and low supply quality, among other issues. So therefore, across Africa, a lot of businesses and households had to turn to noisy, expensive, and polluting sources of energy, mostly diesel and petrol power generators. But the infrastructure hurdle is not the only one that the African continent is facing. Access to finance is also a critical challenge. African countries have to face many red tapes when it comes to accessing development assistance, money, and public sources for climate finance. So the procedures are very cumbersome and very complicated for countries with limited capacities in project development.
So we're talking about shifting a whole continent towards cleaner energy. Why is it so important to get funding to individual innovators and young entrepreneurs? Do you think that their input at that level can really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, I think we need everyone on board on the energy transition train, and certainly there is a lot to be achieved through individual entrepreneurship. But I would say the entrepreneurs are not only those that will be kickstarting projects collaboratively with their communities in the region, but they are going to be the primary customers of those new sources of energy. They benefit from the access to electricity to grow their business and propel the economy of the region, the countries, and therefore the continent into a virtuous circle.
Well, we'll take a closer look now at one of those community projects that are so important to accelerating green energy across the continent. It's in Kenya, where a Congolese refugee spent years building a local solar grid. It's now powering at least 200 businesses. Shirley Sitman with more.
Vasco Hamisi first arrived in the Kakuma refugee camp 12 years ago. In a way, his experience then made him the businessman he is today, running a small green energy company.
I decided to go in green energy first. When I came here, we are really struggling to get light.
Getting light may seem like a minor problem compared with fleeing war and fighting for survival, traumas refugees living here have faced. But without electricity, they would struggle to learn and work. Vasco Hamisi's company, Okapi Green Energy, provides power to 200 businesses.
With reliable electricity supply, I have now brought a refrigerator. I sell cold drinks and water. I also make fresh mango juice, which I sell. We are very grateful because this power really helps us.
It's a life changer. But Okapi Green Energy has a small grid and cannot bring power to everyone just yet.
We are still having more potential people who are still coming to ask for connection. But for the power that we have, the 20 kilowatts that we have, we cannot connect everyone in Kakuma.
The company, though, provides energy outside the camp, hoping to build bridges with the local population, which also lives in poverty with little access to energy.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.